Gotta wet my whistle. There was this guy, let's call him Bob, who had stretched earlobes. I say had. Just wait, it gets ridiculous. Bob had stretched earlobes, and I don't know how long it took him to get to 2 inches, but he had a hell of a time getting there. He was always having problems, they were always sore and irritated, and they would swell up randomly, and he had a blowout, like, on the front of his ear. I guess he put his jewelry in backwards or something, I don't even know. But he had a bunch of problems and throughout the entire duration of stretching. And I'm pretty sure it had something to do with the fact that he A, stretched with electrical tape, and B, was stretching way too fast. I don't remember how long it took him, but regardless of the amount of time it took to get there, it was way too fast for his ears, and boy could you tell. Well, Bob made it to 2 inches, and after a while they calmed down. He still had blowouts, but I'm pretty sure he just didn't realize that that's what they were. But everything was fine and dandy for a while, but then he realized, hey, sleeping with steel eyelets in my ears is uncomfortable. And people were like, hey, you know, once you get to 11 millimeters or so, you're supposed to sleep without the jewelry in, which he absolutely refused to do. He said it was because he thought they would shrink too much and he would always have to downsize all the time. So he didn't want to sleep with them in, but he couldn't sleep with them out. So his solution was to wear silicone, which normally you'd be like, oh hey, yeah, that's a great idea. I personally sleep with silicone eyelets instead of naked earlobes, because I'm afraid they're going to shrink. But instead of wearing Chaos software, like you're supposed to, which is autoclavable and clinically proven not to adhere to your ears, Bob bought some off-brand silicone eyelets and wore those to sleep. Keep in mind, if you're wearing silicone that isn't Chaos software, the maximum amount of time that you can safely wear off-brand silicone is 6 hours. That's it. Any longer and you run the risk of winding up with some serious problems. Well, Bob not only slept with them in the entire night, but he forgot to take them out the next day, and then slept with them in another night on top of that. So he pretty much went 2 whole days with off-brand silicone eyelets that really wouldn't surprise me if he got them from Spencer's in his ears. Well, on day 3, I guess he was like, oh shit, because he took them out, and when he did, there was a chunk of skin attached to the bottom of the eyelet that had come off of his ear. His earlobe had started to adhere to the jewelry. And over time, because he wasn't taking care of it properly, it got so bad, he wound up with a hole right here. Like literally, if he lifted his ear up, you could see the jewelry because he wore jewelry in his ears after he discovered there was a hole in it, because for some reason that's the only logical thing to do. There was a hole basically in the bottom of his earlobe, which eventually got bigger, and not long after that, his entire earlobe split in half. So now Bob has 1 earlobe that's at 2 inches, give or take, and 2 meat flaps. Or better, depending on how hilariously awful you find this to be. And I know you're hoping that it's over, but it gets so much worse. So a couple weeks passed, and he decided, man, I'm tired of having ear flaps. So what does he do? I know you're thinking I'm going to say he cuts them off, but that's not until later in the story. No, he doesn't cut them off. He starts taping jewelry to his meat flaps. Adhesive tape. I don't know what kind of tape it was, but generally it's not a very good idea to have adhesives anywhere near any body jewelry that you're wearing. Well, not for Bob. For Bob, this is a brilliant idea. And he would take pictures of himself, and you could see how pissed off his meat flaps had become because of the adhesive tape and the jewelry. And he would just, like, if it was a circle, like, it didn't matter what it was, or if it was actually jewelry, if it was circular, he would tape it to his ears. I don't know. Well, for a while, that plan seemed to work out okay for Bob, until one day he stood up and said, you know what, I have a great idea. And he took his other earlobe, which is perfectly fine, by the way, aside from the blowout that he didn't know was there. There was nothing wrong with it. And he, I shit you not, recorded himself cutting it in half with a razor. And in the comments of said video, he said he was a professional piercer and that he knew what he was doing. He ended up having to take the video down because it wound up on awful mods, and he was getting a lot of shit for it. So now, Bob, who had 2-inch stretched earlobes, now has 4 meat flaps. And guess what? He started taping jewelry to all 4 of them. His reason behind cutting his ear in half was that he could then wear whatever size he wanted in his ears. Well, this plan seemed to be working out fine for Bob for a couple of months until he decided he just didn't want meat flaps anymore. So he had a buddy cut them off for him. And when people asked him if his ears were fixed, he would say, kinda, sorta, which is hilarious to me, because by that statement alone, you could tell that, like, deep down in his heart, he knew it was wrong, but he did it anyway. Okay, well, Bob still had some earlobe left over after he cut off the meat flaps, and in just under a year, he has managed to pierce them again and make it all the way back up to almost an inch, and has been making progress videos the entire way, which of course star his massive blowouts again. Until recently, he said, you know what, fuck this, I'm done, I can't have stretched earlobes because it's just not possible. Keep in mind, his mindset is not, okay, I'm obviously doing something wrong, maybe I should try to fix this, but instead, it's just impossible. It can't be done. There is no possible reason why this isn't working out. Because this kid, bless his heart, honestly thinks he has done nothing wrong. He legitimately thinks he knows what he's doing. And he has a plethora of other piercings. All of them he did by himself in his house somewhere, and all of them have given him shit at some point or another. There are literally thousands of videos on the internet of people with massive amounts of body mods, and they don't know how to take care of a single one of them.